This might be off topic, but are these things listening to us and sharing our data?
So it's interesting. In fact, they're not. But, you know, the major...
I mean, how can you say that? Let me preface it.
Yep.
You know, I may have a discussion with Kelly Armstrong about the beaches at Normandy or the Battle of the Bulge. And then I go to a social media site, and within seconds, an ad will pop up on that topic. And it could be Oriental rugs. It could be something that, you know, just off topic that I normally wouldn't talk about, but because I did in a setting, ads pop up. And it happens too many times for me to think they don't.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? I think it's even scarier, though, because what's really happening is many of the major tech platforms know so much about you that they can predict your behavior.
They can't
can predict
me
your
thinking
conversation.
something like an Oriental rug.
In fact, they can. It is remarkable how sophisticated some of these companies are. And so that's actually what's happening. They're not listening to you, but they have such incredible predictive power that they can figure it out.
I'm going to say Hermes ties, and I'll bet you at some point this afternoon I'll have... Let's move on. I think they are, and I think it's scary, the amount of data that these devices are collecting. I was in the auction business, did real estate marketing, and I was able to buy mail list using an OSC code, I think it was called, and did direct mail marketing to people I thought may want the property I was selling. Unsolicited mail pops up in your mailbox. How is this different than what marketing companies were doing then through buying those mail lists?
I can maybe start. I would say it's not entirely different, right? There are brokers who sell those kinds of marketing lists now. I think the questions come back to the scale of the data collected, the depth of the data, as Mr. Irwin mentioned, that's out there. And the third piece is, are you actually vetting who you're selling to? As you mentioned, if you're perhaps doing marketing for your small business, that might be one thing. But there was a case where the Justice Department went after Epsilon, a multi-billion-dollar broker, that got sample scam mails that the criminal scammer was going to send to elderly Americans and approved the sale anyway. And so it comes back to that question of what are you actually doing to make sure that someone's not going to use that same information in a harmful way.
Yoda Armstrong.
I just have a secondary question to that real quick, and I agree with that, but even on its best scenario, right, I mean, even whether it's legitimate or illegitimate, there's still a difference between contextual advertising and actually targeted advertising. Like, if you're buying old mail lists and you're going to elderly people, that is not, I mean, you're targeting a specific group in a contextual capacity. This is micro-targeting at a much more sophisticated and, quite frankly, dangerous level, right? And then I go back. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can buy lists that maybe are not just name and one column with interest in real estate. You could buy with health and all kinds of other things we've mentioned in that same data set to really, really get precise about targeting people.
Thank you for that. Let me just ask this. In your written testimony, you talk about various state laws, including those in California and Vermont, that define and require data brokers to register with the state governments. There's also laws in Delaware, Michigan, Virginia, Colorado, and others. Are these laws sufficient in protecting American privacy? Yes. If yes, why? If not, why not? And then that's for you, Mr. Sherman. Mr. Irwin, I would like to ask, what would be the advantage of having a federal law defining and regulating data brokers opposed to the patchwork of state laws?
I would say no on the registry laws. They're an important step, but they don't do anything to block the sale of data. They force some companies defined narrowly to register. A lot of that information actually is wrong or outdated. And so we do need to do more on that front, such as actually controlling the sale of data in regulation.
Yeah, we think the federal law is really critical. The challenge with state laws, one, it's going to leave a large number of people unprotected where those laws haven't passed, and that to us is the biggest problem. A lot of Americans today aren't going to benefit from the privacy protections in CCPA, for example. The other challenge with having a patchwork of state laws is, you know, when your legal team looks at that and you see this complexity of the regulatory environment, it kind of looks for like the bottom line. What's the minimum? And the challenge, and that's really not good for consumers either, because it means we're not setting a high bar that everyone can be held to. Rather, your legal team is just doing legal risk mitigation. And that's not a great situation to be in. It's not good for consumers either. So the federal law to us is much preferable.
I still think the phones are spying on us and sharing that information with some social media platforms until I'm convinced otherwise, and I yield back.
Many of my constituents would agree with you.